Yesterday's video about the Edmonton Oilers talked about how it got worse, how Dave Tippett and the way that he treats his goaltenders, it's so apparent that there is some level of, let's just say, favoritism here. That's the word I'm going to use. Obviously, I'm not an NHL media person. I'm just a fan looking at things from my own perspective, and it looks like there's favoritism over here. Super harsh on Koskinen, super light on Mike Smith. It got even worse following yesterday's game, Edmonton versus Toronto. Of course, there is no McDavid out there to make things a little bit easier for the Oilers, but then again, even though McDavid had been playing previously, it's not like the Oilers were winning anything as of late either. But here are the comments that Dave Tippett had about Mike Smith in yesterday's loss to Toronto. He was solid. First 2 goals, one off the backboard, one off 2 legs or whatever. He gave us a chance to win. All of the retweets about this tweet over here are pointing out how it's night and day when Dave Tippett talks about Koskinen versus when Dave Tippett talks about Mike Smith. It's almost like Mike Smith is this guy's favorite child or whatever, but either way, we're talking about another Edmonton topic here, and I hate this topic as much as you do. Don't worry, I absolutely do despise this topic, and the fact that we're even bringing it up kind of grinds my gears, but you know what? As a secondary Montreal Canadiens fan, I kind of felt, okay, we have to talk about this. It was mentioned on the Montreal Gazette, so why don't we go out there and entertain this idea on the channel? Because, of course, Edmonton, you guys are kind of freaking out over there. The sky is falling in Alberta. And when it comes to the other team we're kind of talking about over here, the Montreal Canadiens, this is just kind of sadistic discussion right here because this team has been going through so much misfortune and the tribulations have really been piling up over here. We have all the guys that are becoming injured or that are testing positive and therefore are not playing. It's going to be crazy, dude. There's probably some form of mercy that the hockey gods are displaying on Montreal because they keep on suspending Canadiens games. Obviously, that's not because of the protocol, that's because the NHL wants to maximize revenue. But either way, we're going over an article here on the Montreal Gazette. Take a look at this piece right here from Jack Todd. The only certainty for sports in 2022 is uncertainty. Once again, everything is pandemic permitting, with plenty of anxious moments for athletes who do compete, especially Canadians at the Winter Olympics. Yeah, it doesn't really seem like this is a Canadiens or Edmonton article based off of the title, but still, stick with me here. This article is from 3 days ago, was published in a few newspapers, I believe. I found a few transcriptions of this article on different publications, so I will leave a link to the main one, the Montreal Gazette article, in the description, so you can go ahead and see what it is Jack Todd is talking about when it comes to the Olympics, and it talks to football, it talks to the Australian Open. There's a few stuff going on here when it comes to other sports and the 2022 sporting landscape. But there is indeed a discussion about the Canadiens, because of course, this is the Montreal Gazette. There is a discussion to be had when it comes to Montreal. Who knows? Everything about 2022 is as uncertain as a baby's bottom. What a weird simile right there. Very weird. You could see it in the Canadiens' first game of the new year, with a crew of youngsters and hopefuls on the ice in Florida against a formidable, let's just say, Stromae, man, great song, Panthers team. The kids gave it a gallant effort before falling 5-2, but the game should never have even been played. He then explains why. The Canadiens had 16 players out in protocol, not counting the injured. The next few weeks will be trying. The Canadiens begin the year on a hiatus. It's a lot of crazy stuff going on here in Montreal. For the Canadiens, the outcome of the games hasn't really mattered since early November. Within 4 months appearing in the Stanley Cup Final, the club was all but eliminated from playoff contention. Now it's all about developing young players and angling for a top pick at the NHL Draft to be held at the Bell Center July 7th and 8th. The Habs want to make a big splash in front of the hometown folks, but that possibility is another year away. The player is Connor Bedard, the best prospect since the last guy named Connor. Unfortunately, Bedard won't be in this year's draft, so the Canadiens are a long shot to draft their first offensive superstar in 50 years. Don't discredit Shane Wright like that, Jack Todd, please. The guy's great. Here is our idea. The team can make a splash by dealing Carey Price, either before the trade deadline or during the offseason. Assuming that Carey Price feels mentally and physically able to go after missing the entire season to date, a trade makes sense for Price and for the team. Okay, so he's bringing up the idea of trading Price. That's not something that is completely brand new. We have discussed a few Price trades here and there. Price will be 35 in August, and after that gallant run last summer fell short, he is to know he's down to no more than 3 or 4 shots at a ring, and the Canadiens are at least 3 or 4 years away from contention. Meanwhile, the Edmonton Oilers are frittering away year after year with 2 of the biggest offensive stars in the game without coming in sniffing distance of a cup, so a deal makes sense all around. Which doesn't mean it will happen. Oh boy. That's the thing we're talking about here, man. I hate it. We took half the video to get here, but we're talking about Carey Price and a trade to the Edmonton Oilers. Now, this is probably the most ridiculous thing that I have seen to date, and it's not even one of those things where it's like, oh, in theory it would make sense. Theoretically, this could be a really good, beneficial move for Edmonton. No, I'm sorry, Jack Todd. Good on you for publishing this piece in the Montreal Gazette and getting your opinion out there, but I have the right to go out there and disagree with your opinion. Carey Price has not played the entire season, and I get it. You caveated this entire thing by saying, oh, assuming that he's okay and he feels mentally and physically able to go after missing the entire season to date. Just because Carey Price feels okay does not mean that he has not missed an entire season so far. You kind of get what I mean? Like, even if Carey Price says tomorrow, okay, I'm 100% ready to go, I'm okay, my body is good, my mind is good, I'm feeling the best that I ever have, he is still going to go out there and be Carey Price at the start of the new year. And not new year as in like January, but new season. Carey Price, and what was his record in November? It's always really bad, isn't it? This guy goes out there and has absolutely dog water starts first few months of the NHL seasons. It's always the same for Carey Price. And then he usually tightens things up around playoff time. And then in the playoffs, if the Canadiens actually make it, he becomes an absolute wall. That's usually the timeline that Carey Price exhibits now, ever since his days of winning Harts and Lindsays have passed. You talk about what Carey Price would be able to accomplish once he comes back into the league. Who cares if he feels mentally or physically okay? He has a track record of not showing up at the beginning of the season consistently. And so, even if an Edmonton team went out there and said, okay, goaltending, Smith, Koskinen, Dave Tippett, all this bias aside, we need a better goaltender. Let's go after Carey freaking Price. It's going to be Groundhog Day, man. Just taking a look at what happens in the past, it doesn't really fit what the Oilers could be looking for here. There are other goaltenders on the market who have better track records so far and who have been actually overachieving compared to what they've been in the past, and guys that would be so much cheaper than Carey Price and his $10.5 million AAV that he actually has a no-move clause on until 2026. He's 34 years old. This contract is going to expire when the guy is 38, and the Oilers, I get it, you have McDavid, you have Draisaitl, you have 2 of the best players in the league. Sure, you could debate that McDavid is underpaid, sure, you could debate that Draisaitl is underpaid too. He probably definitely is. But just because that is the case over here does not mean that you can go out there and carelessly spend your money away to the point where you could add a $10.5 million goalie. Yikes, eh? Darnell Nurse is already making $9.5 million too. You want to add even more stress on the Oilers and their cap problems? We've seen how the Oilers and Ken Holland have navigated the past few years of this cap. You have Duncan Keith, you have Darnell Nurse, you have all these big, expensive players that are making it so that you can't really get any good depth pieces that could help you out in scoring. You need your best guys in the middle of the lineup to step up, and unfortunately, in this losing skid, you haven't been getting that. Ryan McLeod, I've been waxing poetic about this guy the past few videos, and then he goes out there and misses an empty net instead by passing it into the middle when he has a lane to shoot at. I can't believe you've done this, man. After all the great things I said about this guy, he goes off and pulls that mockery of a play. But either way, Carey Price trades from Montreal to other teams are not new when it comes to media discussion, finding things to talk about. It's just Edmonton to me is like the team that makes the least sense possible. And I think you kind of get what I'm saying, right? Sorry, Jack Todd, but you got 1 out of 2 things correct at the end of this article, in my opinion. yeah, it's not gonna happen, and no, it does not make sense. Talk to me in the comments all your thoughts about this entire idea. Price to the Oilers. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.